Lee, I might have forgotten to mention this to you, but I should say here at the outset, we're broadcasting tonight on Crowdsource the Truth 11 because Crowdsource the Truth 10 has been struck. It's incredibly unfair. How are you
Wow,
doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Jason. So what happened? I mean, I didn't think I know, but
Well, we were doing a video last night with John Cullen talking about the National Firearms Act and how the St. Valentine's Day massacre in 1930 something led to the passage of that. And then he knows a lot about guns, so we were going to go through the whole like how different updates to that law have affected things, and he just like had certain like here's a silencer and here's a this thing that you can attach to a gun and here's this kind of gun, and he was just looking at him and showing him and talking about him, and they just shut it off in the middle of the live stream and said you can't look at and talk about guns. But today I've seen a million videos of people firing every kind of gun you can imagine. I appealed the thing and they just said F you, Jason. So people can still join us right after this, Lee. We're going to be talking in depth about some super interesting stuff tonight. But this is why it's important for people to sponsor the show on patreon.com/Stranahan. You've got a new live stream going out on X every day. So it's really important for people to sponsor on patreon.com/Stranahan. Tell us about the X stream.
well, I actually didn't do it last week except for Thursday.
Right.
I think the stuff we're doing Thursday is great. I
Yeah.
may I may pick up again this week. I may not. Uh,
Mhm.
and the only reason why I may not is, uh, I'm not sure if the thing I should be doing is a stream right now. Just because I've been doing it in the past. Like I was kind of recreating the radio show in a
Right.
sense.
Right.
And I don't know if I want to try to recreate something or do something new, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I mean, to some extent, I think what we're doing on Thursdays now is a good taste of that. So perhaps that's the way to go, maybe not every single day.
well, yeah, yeah. I actually thought that. Uh, I will say this, Jason. First off, thank you so much for your friendship. Uh, you are a good friend, and
You too, Lee.
but I will say not just because you're your friend. If you had been brought in as co-host on the backstory, that would have been a kick-ass show. I
It's
think they
true.
should have hired you, Jason, instead of the person they did hire.
Well, I
Yeah,
appreciate that, Lee.
I think
The only
you and I would have done a really good show.
Yeah, and we do, and people see that on patreon.com/Stranahan and the other Crowdsource the Truth sponsorship channels. And thank you for all those kind words. The only problem is if I had been hired by Sputnik, then, George's brother and all the social engineers that are after me would have applied all that stuff that Mike Benz was talking to Tucker Carlson about to knock me out of the box even harder than they're trying to already, if that's possible to imagine. That was an amazing interview,
I
wasn't
don't
it?
think it would have made any difference. You being on Sputnik, even not getting
Maybe
paid.
not.
Like you
You're
say,
right. You're right.
if you're gonna take the heat, get paid at least.
It's a good point. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right, though. They used to always, he says that in court all the time, Russian affiliated. And by the way,
right.
it's like if you were hired by Dyson to design vacuum cleaners, would they say, oh, British affiliated engineer? It's like, whatever, just getting a job and doing business with a company.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Again, I'm not. I don't think you are either. I'm not ashamed to say I'm pro. Me, I'm not saying you are, but I'm very pro Russian.
I am
And
too, Lee. I
so
am. I mean, when Putin speaks, he's consistent, and what he's saying makes sense. So people are like, oh, I don't trust him. You don't need to trust him. Just I mean, what he's saying is sensible. So what we're going to talk about tonight in depth, and people are going to love this, Lee, because you have so much insight into this stuff, is all of this news surrounding this guy, Alexei Navalny, who has now died in a penal colony. This is super interestingly. I found this penile colony on Google Earth. So we're going to really check it out and see what's going on over there. It's incredibly crappy. It looks like a terrible place to be.
yeah, no one's ever said Russian prisons are a vacation spot. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I think prison in Maine is probably terrible. It's not
Right.
anywhere you want to
Exactly.
be.
Exactly. Now, on this Navalny thing, I'm going to say something unusual for me. Let's try not to be fair. Now,
What do you mean?
let me explain. What I mean by that is my tendency is to give the, benefit of the doubt or try not to uh, assume things. However, come on. I mean, what the fuck is going on here? Look, look. You see what I'm saying? I mean, like we can start anywhere, but let's start with this. Why is Biden coming out talking about Navalny, not an American, a Russian citizen? Look, even if Putin stabbed him, even if there's footage of Putin stabbing Navalny to death,
Yeah.
what the fuck? Why should I care? I mean, I might. Why should the president come out and talk about that? Makes sense.
Yes.
I mean,
They could do a scene like from what's that Bad Boys where he takes the soap and beats the crap out of Sean Penn. Do
yeah,
it like that.
or full on jacket.
Yeah.
But also on Navalny, and I don't think I think the Brits did it. And the reason I think that is I've looked into other cases like Litvinenko and the Skripal case, and the Brits are all around that stuff. And
Well, let's get into a little bit of detail because I think there's a lot of people who maybe don't have the kind of background on this that you and I do, and we're going to get into that for sure during the sponsor portion.
But I also want to jump to the end, which is
Okay.
even if Putin did do it, let's go with that for a second.
Sure.
Why should we send money to Ukraine? Because Putin did something to this guy in Russia. It makes no sense.
Right.
The U.S. spending, and also, by the way, the obvious hypocrisy, which is a low bar, the obvious hypocrisy about Gonzalo Lira,
Right.
which Putin said nothing about. If you're going to care about someone dying in prison, perhaps it should be an American you care about if you're the president. That's my point.
It's an excellent contrast that you draw, and I think it is very interesting. I mean, even if you just put his name into Google and just do the simple kind of test of like who is reporting on this, we can see the New Yorker, BBC, the Atlantic, all of these AP News, all of these mainstream things. And like you said, we've got, New York Times right here, CNN, Fox News. None of these things we're talking about. Gonzalo Lira is an American guy, First Amendment. And also the other thing is they say, oh, Alexei Navalny, he's Putin's, greatest enemy and everything. But the truth, he's, if you just, I mean, again, just from what we can see, I don't want to get into this whole like, oh, I don't trust Putin. I don't need to trust Putin. I'm just looking at what we can see that's in the public domain. Just even photographs of this dude, Alexei Navalny, he's clearly like a Black Lives Matter protester type guy who, But I'm saying not for that. Yeah, right. Not for Black Lives Matter, but like a built up, like here's a picture of him at a protest. And he's just got a bullhorn under his arm and a crowd out there, just like you'd see in Union Square Park with somebody else doing this for some other movement like Black Lives Matter. You'd think Putin's greatest rival.
He's a Nazi.
He is. We'll get to that in a second, but weigh in on this, Lee. Wouldn't Putin's greatest rival have to be some known political figure, some big business guy in Russia or something, not some schmuck on the street like this?
Who gets very low vote counts, by the way. He was no threat to Putin politically.
Right.
And also, if you're trying to figure out who did it, why would Putin do this? Navalny was not
right.
Putin has no reason to. Navalny was on ice, basically. So you may think that was unfair because you don't know things, but not you, Jason. But I'm just saying. But even if look, I'll put it like this: pick a country Greenland, okay? If the president of Greenland sucks and he's bad and he kills a guy in Greenland, do we have to give $20 billion to Iceland?
Exactly.
How does it make, and it makes no fucking sense at
Exactly.
all. Again, even if you grant the premise that Putin is a bad guy, the worst guy in the world, and he murdered this guy in cold blood, put a pillow over his face, like one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Even if you grant that, what does it equal giving Zelensky $60 billion? And that's what, don't forget, that's explicitly what they're saying.
Exactly.
You're seeing politicians say, we got to give Ukraine money.
Right.
But
because of this Navalny death. Right.
Right.
And it's not just politicians. This is the chatter, right? You look at the politicians who are saying it. It's the Dan Goldmans, it's the Adam Schiffs, the Norm Eisens, the Larry Tribes, all the same people who are chattering about all of this. It's just unbelievable. You know, the other thing is, I was talking to John Mark Dugan about Navalny a while ago, and he was saying that Navalny was in prison because he had become involved in some kind of financial scam involving the post office and Sephora.
But again, that gets into the weeds, and the weeds loses a lot of people. So I don't want to get too much into that.
But I just want people to know that that charge exists, because they say, oh, he's just a political prisoner, but we're ignoring everything that's happening to January 6th people. We're ignoring everything that's happening to Donald Trump with lawfare and claiming this is somehow bad.
So here's one litmus test to use. If someone's talking about Navalny and they're not talking about Gonzalo Lira and Julian Assange, fuck them. I mean, don't pay no attention to them. Like Adam Schiff, if he's talking about Navalny, is he also talking about Assange? They bring up Gonzalo Lira, who's in California, Oh,
yeah.
I mean, and if so, the people going after Putin on this are used to, as you say, you didn't use the phrase, but it's the usual suspects. It's the same people who go after Trump, right?
Right, Russia gators.
Is there one person, like is Massey or Rand Paul upset about Navalny? Not that I can see.
Probably not.
I don't see one person who's right on other issues who's on this Navalny thing. And that should tell you something.
Yeah. Someone in the comments is saying that the Navalny corpse has gone missing. Have you heard anything about that?
I don't care.
Okay.
And I've heard something about it. But I'm just trying to say, that's the kind of, look, this is the kind of detail that they want to throw into the press.
Just to make it crazy.
Right. That's exactly right. That's why I'm kind of like, okay, grant the premise. Putin, punch him in the nuts and kill him. Okay, he did that.
Death by nut punch.
But how does it equal a blank check to Zelensky?
Yeah. No, it doesn't. I agree with you completely. And again, I think the timing is one of the most suspicious aspects.
Now, I'm not in the habit of giving advice to mainstream media, but as you know, I covered many White House press briefings. So right. I'm going to give a hint. If you're in the mainstream media, next time Adam Schiff or someone says, we've got to give money to Zelensky because Putin's bad, Navalny, raise your hand. Call me, Jason.
Lee, please speak.
Why?
They will not tell you why.
There you go. Just say
they will not.
Why. Just ask them. Just say, why should we do that? Okay.
Well, let's see what some of these people are tweeting, because I think it's going to be very informative in terms of this whole Navalny thing. Again, you used to always have a catchphrase during your Periscope days of making people smarter. And I think that by talking about some of this stuff, we can help people understand what's going on in the news and stuff a little better. Here, look, he says the courageous critic of Putin and the Kremlin dies. What was he doing that was courageous? What sort of political threat did he represent living in this penal colony? It's like saying somebody in jail is a political threat to Joe Biden.
Right? He's obviously a CIA MI6
Right.
shill.
I agree.
Look, and even the detail that his wife showed up at Munich Security Conference, coincidentally, before he died, then they announced he was dead. There's so many obvious things here, but the main thing for policy right now is they're trying to get money for Ukraine because Ukraine isn't in a lot of trouble. Ukraine has basically lost the war.
Right.
I mean, and also they're acting as though if they had more money
That would
earlier,
make a difference.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't. Yes, it wouldn't.
It's really just a last-ditch effort to steal money through this avenue before it becomes totally closed off.
That's right. That's right. And that's what I think the thing you focus on is. To me, I don't want to, who done it, in a sense, it's as irrelevant to me as the president of Greenland killing someone. It's not relevant, really. And also, again, I don't think anyone's opinion is going to be changed by this. If you didn't like Putin before,
Yeah.
you don't like him now.
Right.
Well, I'll put it like this: if I told you Charles Manson killed
Drown
someone
a
else,
puppy. Yeah, it wouldn't change your opinion of him. You already
Right.
realize he's crazy. No, this
you
is
don't go,
interestingly.
that tells it. I'm post Manson now.
We have a question from the comments, Lee. Are you ready for this one?
Sure.
Do you think it's possible that Navalny is secretly on vacation in Belize with Fannie Willis? It's possible.
What I think is, again, I said this about Epstein. I use the phrase, he's off the board. He's off the
Right.
chessboard.
Exactly.
So Navalny, think about this. Navalny had outlived his usefulness in the same way that I think Epstein had outlived his usefulness. Epstein was never going to be a good blackmail gatherer again.
Well, but they also get to a point where Epstein was having him on the record alive is dangerous because he could be compelled to testify. If he's on the record as dead, he's not going to be involved in any kind of court cases. Same thing with Navalny.
And, also, Navalny was, do you remember the underwear Novichok?
Yes, we're going to talk a lot about that, but we're almost out of time here. We can get into the details with Novichok and all of that stuff because Porton Downs is cooking up Novichok and everything. But we're going to take a break here. We'll be back in just about 10 minutes on patreon.com/Stranahan. And people can also join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. I really recommend that people subscribe to that. It's free to subscribe, and YouTube keeps messing with me. So odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about Novichok. We're going to investigate this crazy underwear Novichok. We're going to investigate this crazy penal colony in Russia where he was living. I have a lot of questions for you about this, Lee. Have you ever seen this where they had him?
No.
I think you're going to be pretty interested in it. It's unusual, and it doesn't look like a regular prison.